Once again, let me welcome us to another module that we are calling fertility. One of the most important modules in studying humanity, but also if you to understand the type of population that you have or your quality of population and fertility in itself. Studying fertility will help you achieve a lot of analytical skills, but also you'll be able to understand the different patterns of reproduction, but also how populations survive throughout life in a lifetime. So apart from this particular lecture that we're going to have today, there is a module unit which shows the particular modules that we're supposed to undertake. However, at the end of this module, the student should be able to understand key information on fertility. And this is best explained in the module outline, which I'll be sharing in the next lecture, where we can have a look of how the course or the entire module will be discussed. So the objective for this particular lecture is that we should be, or the student should be able to understand the key terms and the definitions in fertility, but also should be able to have the different descriptions or the types of fertility and infertility. Thirdly, should be that the student should be able to understand the different measures of fertility. How do we measure fertility in a population? The fourth one should be the determinants of fertility. The fifth one, the demography of fertility and infertility. Then population fertility indicators, which are some of the which are originating from some of the measures of fertility. So we just want to go away and look through the key terms or the demographic terms or in fertility. In demography, fertility indicates the product or the output of reproduction rather than the ability to have uh, children. Whereas in common term or in some of the science, fertility may refer to a product, may refer to your ability or someone's ability to have a child. In demography, we are looking at the output of reproduction, meaning we're looking at the product itself, meaning a live birth. And that live birth in demography is what we consider as fertility. So the physiological ability to have children that is manifested roughly in the period between menarche and menopause in women is termed as fecundity. So someone's physiological ability, which majority of the people take as a fertility, is actually not what we consider as fertility in demography. So in demography, we look at if someone physically has the ability to produce or to have children, then that person is fecund, and that is why we are referring to that ability as fecundity. So demographers define a third further aspect of reproduction, fecundability, which is the probability of becoming pregnant or the likelihood of exposure to the possibility that depends on the pattern of sexual and pregnancy prevention behaviors. So someone's probability or the likelihood that an individual is exposed. For example, an exposure would mean that an individual gets married. So for individuals that are married, the possibility of of the fecundability is high, because we assume that the exposure to different sexual patterns for individuals that are married are higher than those who are not married. Likewise, for individuals that are of reproductive age or youthful, their exposure to certain patterns of sexual and pregnancy behavior is different from those that are younger or are older. Therefore, their fecundability is rated higher than those who are younger or who are older. So those are very key terms that need to be understood throughout this module as we discuss, because we shall be able to use them concurrently, but also we shall continuously use them. So you have to be very critical that when we're in this particular module, when we're talking about fertility, we are not actually looking at someone's ability to have children. We are looking at the final product. And if we want to look at the ability, then we are looking at the fecundity, not the fertility. So, similarly, demographers use the term infertility to refer to the absence of a live-born child or live-born children, or the presence of few children, rather than sterility, that refers to possible physiological status underlying childliness. So again, here there are two critical words that we shall continuously use, or key terms that we shall use in this particular model. And in this regard, when we're using infertility, we shall be referring to the absence of a live-born baby or a live-born child, or we shall be looking at the presence of few children. However, when we shall be talking about sterility, there we are referring to the possible physical status underlying childliness, meaning that an individual's inability to physically have a child is what we call sterility rather than infertility. Conception and pregnancy that is followed by fetal loss, whether due to spontaneous or induced abortion, or at term, meaning stillbirth, is not considered to contribute to fertility by demographers, as its occurrence is not discernible demographically. So when a child is born, when we're talking about fetal death, either a macerated stillbirth or a fresh stillbirth, we do not consider those as some of the factors that are contributing to fertility, because demographically it does not agree, because if someone had a stillbirth, then the person is able the person is not sterile, meaning physically the person is able to produce, but this death, the spontaneous death, uh, it does not also contribute to a live birth. So the person is demographically not it does not agree, because then you've given birth to a fetus that does not breathe. So you do not influence fertility in that regard. So accordingly, fertility refers to live births only, and infertility refers only to shortfalls in live-born children, whether or not pregnancy occurred. So whether a pregnancy occurred or it did not occur, as long as the final product is not there of a live baby, then you're infertile in that regard. So, in further definition of fertility and infertility, fertility refers to an individual or population's ability to conceive and produce offsprings during a specific period, often measured as a number of live births per thousand women of childbearing age in a given year. We shall look at the different measures of fertility. So at this particular point, you just look at an individual's ability to produce an offspring that is live, which I explained in the first definitions there. So some of these scholarly definitions have continuously been upgraded because then as people do a little more of research, they are able to advance the type of definitions that are there. And similarly, the inability to achieve a pregnancy or carry a pregnancy to term after a year or more of regular and protected sexual intercourse, it can result from various affecting either the male, female, or both partners. So you can see that at the last end, we're looking at carrying a pregnancy to term, meaning carrying a pregnancy to term is that you're able to have a live birth. So your particular inability to have a live birth causes you to have infertility. So meaning whether you get pregnant or you don't, the mere fact that the final product of a live birth does not exist, and then you're able to be called infertile in demography. However, just to remind you that the inability, the physiological inability is called sterility. So you do not have to confuse the two key terms. So that takes us to the different types or stages of infertility. And the first stage or the type we want to look at is what we call primary infertility, where it is the inability of a couple to conceive and carry a pregnancy to term. We here the word couple may mean both, but here we're looking at a woman, but also we know that sometimes a man might be the one who is sterile. So your inability to conceive and carry a pregnancy to term after at least 1 year of regular and unprotected sexual intercourse without achieving pregnancy. It is often the initial struggle to conceive. So this is mainly what we call sterility, where an individual physically or in the physiology is unable to carry a particular pregnancy. And most times the WHO gives a particular period where they can diagnose someone with infertility. And therefore, we're looking at a period of 1 year. So if someone visited you in your health facility and they have continuously told you that they have had sexual intercourse and for a period of 1 year, and then they have been unable to conceive, the WHO agrees that you can diagnose this person sterile or with any infertility in that regard, because then they are unable to carry a pregnancy. But also, it would simply mean that someone is diagnosed infertile even if they conceived and they are continuously not carrying that particular pregnancy to term. So their pregnancy does not result into a live birth. So some of the common causes of this primary infertility include conditions like polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, uterine abnormalities. We're looking at sperm issues and unexplained infertility. It's a complex interplay of factors that hinder conception. So sometimes we're looking at the inability of the ovum to be fertilized. Sometimes we're looking at some uterine abnormalities that someone may not be able to carry a particular pregnancy to term. We know very many of these causes. Sometimes it is as a result of low sperm counts or the inability for the sperm to be able to swim to make to meet an ovum. So there are other different causes of infertility, but our main focus in this particular module is to understand fertility and some of the different aspects of it. So you may have to go and do more reading about some of the causes, but there are very many and they could differ according to the different characteristics of individuals. So the second type is the secondary infertility, so which refers to the inability to conceive and carry a pregnancy to term after successfully having one or more biological children. So it can come as a surprise after some previous successful pregnancies. So you could have conceived earlier on, maybe you have two or three children, but then at the end, after successfully having those pregnancies, those live births, you fail to conceive and carry another pregnancy to term after your previous ones. So that we term it as a secondary infertility. And some of the causes include age-related factors, changes in health, or new reproductive challenges that arise after previous successful pregnancies. It can be due to different set of factors than primary infertility. So issues like age, people's change in health, where you may realize someone has a high blood pressure, and therefore because of such cardiovascular problems, they may be able to carry, they may not be able to carry a birth to term because the challenges that are associated with cardiovascular diseases then means they may not be able to successfully deliver uh, uh, a live baby because of those different challenges. So we want to look at the measures of fertility. Having looked at the introduction and some of the types of fertility, we just need to peruse through the measures of fertility. We were able to mainly go through some of these measures for those who were able to attend our previous modules on I think it was the introduction, either introduction to demography. We were able to look at some of these particular. Yeah, so we were able to look at some of those measures. So today we shall just be running through some of the measures of fertility in a population, because then they are very key that when you're implementing a particular project, you can be able to do a projection of the kind of population you will have in the near future, but also the quality of the population you will have. But also you can be able to calculate the replacement level, uh, the year of life this particular cohort or the particular population can live for. So then this can help you in trying to plan, knowing that in the next 20 years we shall have this number of elderly women, we shall have this number of elderly men, we shall have this number of babies, and these are all very important in the planning process. And then you can also be able to use this in designing the kind of interventions, but also in trying to understand some of the challenges that face a particular population. And these challenges might arise as a result of the composition of your population. So the first measure of fertility is what we call the total fertility rate, and it measures the average number of children a woman is expected to have during her reproductive years. So the total fertility rate is perhaps the most commonly used standardized fertility measure because it is ideal for comparative purpose, but also it is a comprehensive summary measure readily understood at least as a general concept. So the theoretical replacement rate for a population is a total fertility rate of 2,100. This implies that 1,000 women have 1,000 live births to replace themselves. So 1,000 births to replace their male counterparts and 100 births to replace those who do not reach or survive through their reproductive years. So, meaning that if if a woman, if the number of women who needed to produce or to have live birth that can replace themselves is 1,000, meaning that one woman is bearing one child. That the first child that these are 1,000 women give birth to as live birth, they are the ones who replace them, meaning 1,000 women and 1,000 live births. Then they have another 1,000 bats to replace their male counterparts, meaning the expectation is that these women will first replace themselves, then they replace the males. Then there is a bounty of 100 bats. Now that is to replace those who do not survive, so meaning those who die at a younger age without having children and so forth. So at this time, the theoretic replacement rate would be 2.1. So for every woman of reproductive age is expected to have two children at least if there is to be a replacement. So the advantage of using total fertility rate is also that it includes, it is simple and reflects the overall fertility rate. For example, Uganda's current fertility rate is 5.2 according to the recent Uganda Demographic Health Survey. So meaning that for the average number of women or the average number of children every woman of reproductive health age in Uganda should produce is about five. It's about five children. So you can be able to see that. You could also look at the statistics of South Sudan, you could look at the statistics of South Africa, and you can be able to to compare and contrast these. So to calculate total fertility rate, you sum up the age specific fertility rates, then you multiply the value by 5. So if the age-specific fertility rates are given in 5-year age groups, to find the total number of children per 1-year age range, then by dividing uh, by 1,000 to get a per woman value. So it calculates the total number of births a woman would have if she experienced all the births in the 5-year age groups over her reproductive life. So that is to mean the total fertility rate is equals to total age-specific fertility rates times 5, because 5 is the 5-year age group. So this is an example of how you can be able to compute a total fertility rate. So using this data that is obtained from Pennsylvania, you should be able to obtain the 1996 total fertility rate for Pennsylvania. So how do you compute it? You can be able to see from our first range here, it is what they call age of the mother. So the age of the mother, you can see 10 to 14, 15 to 19, 20 to 24. So it is in a 5-year age group. And then you can be able to see here that it is the number of live birth. So for children that are aged 10 to 14, these are the number of live birth. Then these are the number of female population, and then the age specific rate. So you can be able to see here that the age cohort ends at 49. Why? Because it is expected that uh, by 49, the woman has already reached uh, their menopause and they are unable to conceive. Likewise, they have recently included the ages 10 to 14. However, those days they used to just use the ages 15 to 19. But the recent cases, or the, 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 the recent cases where children less than 10 years conceive, children of 10 years conceive, 13, 14, 12 years conceive. So that makes it possible. And you can see that in this data, the mother that was aged 10 to 14, they had 367 live births. However, it is always expected that there are fewer births at the beginning of the age group, but also at the end, because then these are people who are starting, or who are ending their reproductive uh, ages. So you can be able to see their population, and but also their age specific rate. So you can see this is a rate that is at 100, meaning the possibility of a person being able to conceive. So you can see the person 10 to 14 years, the specific rate, or the possibility of being able to conceive is 0.9. However, it is drastically increasing, and women who are 25 to 29 had the highest chances of being able to produce, or their age specific fertility rate is higher than any. And you can see it climaxes at 34 years, and from 35 to about 49 it drags strategically. So for you to be able to compute this age specific, I mean the total fertility rate, you should be able to add all these, sum all these age specific rate, which sum gives you 351.4, and you can be able to multiply it by, you'll be able to multiply this figure by 5, and it will be able to give you the total fertility rate for Pennsylvania at that particular year. So if I multiply this uh, by 5, it will give you a figure of 1757. So because you're dealing with 1,000, and if you divided it by 1,000, it will give you 1.75, which is 1.8, about there. So it would mean, if you rounded it off, it would mean roughly 2 children. So one woman would be required to produce 2 children as a replacement for all this population. Another measure is what we call the general fertility rate, and this is defined as the number of births per year per 1,000 media women of reproductive or childbearing age. So where our general fertility rate is looking at the births over the number of women aged 15 to 49 years. You multiply it by 1,000. So where this W of 15 to 49 years is the total number of women of childbearing age 15 to 49 years at the mid of the year in a given general geographical area. So here we are looking at the media population, but we're only looking at the media population of childbearing age, because we cannot consider men because they do not conceive. So here we are generally looking at media population of women. So the number of live birth that occur in that particular year divided by the number of women of reproductive age of that particular year multiplied by 1,000 gives you what we call the general fertility rate. So B, like I've said, is the number of live birth in a given year. Another measure we want to look at is the general marital fertility rate, and for it, it looks at the overall measure of fertility of married women. It is the number of live birth per year per 1,000 media married women. So just like general fertility rate, it will look at the birth, the live births in that particular year, divide by the number of married women of reproductive age, 15 to 49 years. So here we are basically only looking at marital, or we are only looking at married women. So if you wanted to understand what is the marital fertility rate, you can be able to see. So if the fertility rate is higher among married women, you should be able to understand then that it is your married population that does not actually have access or does not use contraception, or they are rarely using strategies of hindering conception. So then you can be able to understand and plan appropriately for such a population. Another key fertility measurement is what we call the crude birth rate. Most times we put it into short form and we call it as CBR. And this represents the number of live birth per 1,000 people in the total population. It has several advantages. However, to measure CBR, we are looking at the total number of live births, and then we divide them by the media population and multiply by 1,000. So here we are looking at both male and female. That is why we're calling it a crude birth rate. So you're just going to be able to look at how many live births did I have in this particular year, and then you divide it by your media population and multiply by 1,000, and you shall be able to get your crude birth rate. Its advantages include that it is simple and applicable in demographic analysis. However, the disadvantage is that it does not have age specific, and it does not account for population structure. So the implication is that its use is initially for fertility assessment and for broad comparisons. So you just do it for initial assessments, meaning for the beginning as a baseline. So because it does not look at age specifically. So this will be a generalized measure. So you can be able to see in that example that you have ages 0 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 79, and 80 and above. Then you can be able to see the male population and the female population. However, you can see from the age 0 to 15, there are no number of live birth to women. It's because initially the thinking is that these women have not reached their reproductive age and they are unable to bear children at that particular age, and therefore they do not have any live birth. However, you can see from the ages 15 to 49, there are live birth that are occurring here. Most especially, there are more birth to women in the ages 15 to 24 in this 10-year cohort. However, from the ages 50 to 100, they again no live birth because it is expected that these women have hit their menopause and they cannot be able to conceive. So your crude birth rate will look at the number of live birth in a year and then over the average population in that year times 1,000. So in these live births would mean we shall add all the live births in this column, which gives us 1,000, which gives us 11,413 live births, divide by the total number of people you can see here. So you will add the male in this column and have the total here, and then have female in this column and have the total here to give you the crude birth rate. Another measure that is very important is what we call the age-specific fertility rate. The age-specific fertility rate calculates birth rates for specific age groups of women, offering insights into fertility patterns within different age cohorts. So the advantage is that it comprises and it has the ability to capture variations across age groups. Because you're looking at this data from age groups, or you're able to look at the different age groups, then it makes it very easy for you to do comparison across the different age groups. However, the disadvantage is that it involves complexity and data requirements. So the implications include there is a targeted policy development and understanding general changes in fertility. So it is a bit complex in its requirement. So when you're looking at the number of live birth, you have to look at a specific age group. It does not look at a general, or it does not generalize the specific age specific births. So you would be looking at age-specific fertility rate. Then to calculate it, you're looking at the number of live birth in a specified age group in a particular year. So meaning for the example above here, you would be looking at the age group 15 to 24. That is what we are referring to as an age group. Is this a cohort, a 15 to 24? That is a cohort. So you would be having to look at what are the number of live birth in this particular age group in this year. In this case, if we looked at the age group 15 to 24, the number of live birth would be 6,846. So you would put here that figure as the number of live birth in the age group 15 to 24. Divide by the total number of females in that particular age group. So we would look at the total number of female in this particular age group, meaning we are dividing 6,846 by 35,000 females. Then we able to multiply it by 1,000, and it shall be able to give you your age specific fertility rate for that particular cohort of 15 to 24 years. Another measure is what we talking about as net reproductive rate, and this is the average number of daughters a woman would have in her lifetime if she followed the current age-specific fertilities and mortality rates of her population. It is a measure of generational replacement that indicates whether a population can sustain itself in the long run. So, if you wanted to calculate whether a population is able to replenish, what we call the replacement mode, if someone is able to replace, it is this particular measure that you can be able to use. And for it to calculate this, you will have to look at because you're looking at the age-specific fertility rate. It is also looking at the age-specific mortality rate. So you should be able to have data which is most times very scarce on age-specific mortality rate, and most times it is looking at the number of daughters. So you'll be able to look at live birth that is for daughters only, and subject it to the specific uh, mortality and fertility rates of that age group, and you will be able to understand the net reproduction rate. So there are other factors that influence. We want to look at the factors that influence fertility rate as fast as possible. Then we can end there for today, then proceed there tomorrow. So let us just look at the different factors, the different factors that influence fertility rate. So we are looking at socioeconomic status. It plays a significant role because people with lower income and limited employment tend to have higher fertility rate. In such circumstances, children may be seen as a source of labor and support in old age. So most times you can be able to see that people who are staying in what is classified as poor regions possibly have more children. One of the reasons is that children are seen as labor, but also as support in old age. But also we know that in lower income states, there are limited type of what we would refer to as leisure, because the leisure has become monetary. So the inability to afford certain types of leisure would simply mean that in population theories, it means that people start to engage in sexual activities as a leisure, as a leisure, as a leisure activity, and therefore uh, the chances that they will have more children is there. But also education is there. Higher education levels are associated with delayed childbearing and small families, because educated individuals often prioritize career development and personal goals before starting a family. So most people will first want to say that I need to complete school, I need to find a job, I need to buy land, I need to build a house. So all these as because you've gone to school, they become your priority, and you rarely prioritize being pregnant or getting married or having children. So the chances, however, are that those who are uneducated will not have so many career priorities as those that are educated, and therefore they will have a lot of time and start childbearing very early. That is why, however, the patterns, some patterns are shifting, but some days you would find that people in the rural areas are the ones who have early childbearing days, but also because of the urbanization that has occurred, people in the semi-urban and some towns have started having early childbearing years. Then we're looking at cultural and religious beliefs. These strongly impact fertility norms. Different cultures and religions may promote varying views on family size. So some may encourage large families as a sign of prosperity, while others may emphasize smaller families. So religion and culture are some of the influences of fertility, because then in the biblical context they will tell you that the Bible states that people should be able to fill the earth as the salt that is, as the sand or as the stars. So then you may realize that among Christians, the belief of having more children is there, but also among Muslims, you're able to know that they promote the marriage of 3 to 4 women or wives. So some of these cultural beliefs or religious beliefs influence the growth of populations. However, there are also some cultural or religious beliefs that may not allow people to use contraceptives and family planning methods, and therefore control of conceptions may be very hard. So contraceptive use is also among, and we're saying that it is a critical factor in fertility control, and access to or utilization of effective contraceptives manage family size and spacing. So places or countries that have wide access to contraceptives often experience lower fertility rates. However, in countries that have a low contraceptive uptake, have a lot of have high fertility rates in that regard. So we also look at government policy, and others may offer incentives or disincentives to family sizes. So, for example, the Chinese one-child policy, where they offered people incentives, but also they put stringent measures, and those are how some of the government policies can influence. But also, some policies we see in Africa include that there are policies that are allowing young girls out of school that are below the age of, I think, 18 to start using contraceptives. And therefore, the question the different critics are asking is that have governments lowered the age of adulthood? Because then, if you can allow young people who are below the age 18 to accept contraceptives, then it would mean that we do not have young people at all, or we do not have people who are younger or who we call as juvenile, because many of the African countries have that any person that is below the age of 18 is a young person. So with some of those policies, there are quite some very many questions that people would ask. But regardless, some of these policy continuously shape fertility in the different countries. So the interplay of the factors, it is essential to recognize that the complex interplay of multiple factors influences fertility rates. Rarely is fertility solely determined by one factor. Instead, it results from a combination of socioeconomic, educational, healthcare, cultural, religious, and policy-related influences. So therefore, we cannot just say that someone's education level is the only one that is giving them this type of thought on definitions. The ideal is that these are all interplaying factors. When you're looking at someone's cultural background, he may be very educated, but he may be influenced by the cultural norms, by the cultural values that he believes in, regardless of his religious background. So the interplays may be both, and these continuously will influence fertility rates. So, what is the implication for the society? That the variations in fertility have profound implications for society. So, this means that there's going to be a shift in the demography. The demographic characteristics of the community is going to shift because of the fertility rate. If the population is predominantly poor, then we may be able to see that there are higher children. Why? Because we say that poverty has an influence on someone's fertility. And then drastically, as a rise of this population, we can be able to see the outbreak of some of the health problems, some of the diseases, but also it has an economic impact. It might be a positive one, but it might also be a negative one. At a younger age, it might mean that this country may have a very high dependency ratio, because then the population is predominantly poor, but also at the same time, they are producing a lot, and these young people are not engaged in any income generating activity. And then it also means that there might be changes in the social setting. And because of advancements in technology and so forth, you may start to realize that the community becomes more immoral, because there are more younger people in the community who are getting married to each other, who do not have principles as to why or as to how they can continuously live. But also, we can see that the implication sometimes is that the cultural values in these communities continuously get eroded, because then the replacement levels are high, and the children who then come in to take over some of these roles do not have the cultural brief, or they do not have the information. So these high fertility rates can strain resources, but also the declining rates may lead to aging population and workforce challenges. So implications are vice versa. We've seen in Italy during the COVID times, the elderly people were the ones who grossly suffered, and we were able to see that could be as a result of the low total fertility rate they have, and therefore they had a lot of aging population. So that is where I wish to stop for today in discussing fertility, so that tomorrow we can be able to dive into understanding infertility, and then we shall continue like that with the module. So, Samuel, I would want to end here for today. We can